Welcome everyone to our chapter-by-chapter deep dive into Charlotte Bronte's classic and enduring masterpiece, Jane Eyre. I'm your guide, and today we're going to examine together the events of Chapter 1 of the novel, followed by a deep analysis of its characters, themes, motifs, and literary devices. This opening chapter wastes no time in throwing us headfirst into the bleak and oppressive world of Gateshead Hall, in which young Jane finds herself. So, let's make a start. The novel opens on a dreary November day at Gateshead Hall. 10-year-old Jane Eyre, our protagonist and narrator, is deliberately excluded from the family circle by her aunt, Mrs. Reed. While Mrs. Reed sits with her 3 children, John, Eliza, and Georgiana, by the fireside, Jane is forbidden from joining them because she supposedly lacks proper sociable qualities. Jane retreats to a window seat hidden by curtains, where she reads Bewick's History of British Birds. The illustrations captivate her imagination as she escapes into a world of desolate regions, shipwrecks, and cold northern shores. This momentary peace is shattered when John Reed, her 14-year-old cousin, discovers her hiding spot. He verbally abuses Jane, reminding her that she is a dependent, a beggar, and has no right to touch his books. John then throws the book at Jane, causing her to hit her head against the door and cut herself. When Jane retaliates by comparing John to a murderer, slave driver, and Roman emperor, he attacks her. The household servants, Bessie and Miss Abbott, break up the fight. Jane is blamed for the confrontation and, despite her protests, is locked in the Red Room as punishment. Class and social inequality. From the opening pages, Bronte establishes the rigid class hierarchy that will haunt Jane throughout the novel. Though related by blood to the Reeds, Jane occupies a liminal social position, neither servant nor family. John's cruel reminder that Jane has no money and that her father left her none illustrates how economic status determined worth in Victorian society. Jane's position as a dependent orphan makes her vulnerable to mistreatment with no recourse, highlighting the particularly precarious position of women without financial independence in 19th-century England. Female rebellion and resistance. Perhaps most striking is Jane's fierce reaction to John's bullying. Rather than accepting her mistreatment, as would be expected of a dependent child, especially a girl, in Victorian society, Jane fights back. Her comparison of John to tyrants, Roman emperors, shows both her education and her unwillingness to accept injustice silently. This rebellious spirit, unusual for a female character of this era, establishes Jane as a proto-feminist heroine who will challenge social conventions throughout the novel. The adults' reaction to Jane's rebellion is equally telling. They view her resistance not as justified self-defense but as inexcusable insubordination. Miss Abbott chastises Jane. "What shocking conduct to strike a young gentleman, your benefactress's son. Your young master." This reinforces the heir's expectations that Jane should accept mistreatment from her superiors without complaint. Isolation and escape through imagination. The window seat, separated by a curtain, symbolizes Jane's isolation from the Reed family. Yet this marginal space also provides Jane with autonomy and psychological escape. Through literature, Jane transcends her imprisonment at Gateshead, demonstrating how imagination becomes a survival mechanism for the oppressed. The birds in Bewick's book, with their freedom of movement, contrast sharply with Jane's confinement, foreshadowing her later quest for liberty. Gothic elements and foreshadowing. The chapter introduces Gothic elements that will permeate the novel: the gloomy weather, physical confinement, and psychological terror. The dreary November day sets an ominous tone, while Jane's imprisonment in the Red Room at the chapter's end foreshadows more intense psychological horrors to come. The blood from Jane's injury also introduces the color red, which will repeatedly symbolize passion, rage, and danger throughout the novel. Conclusion and overall summary of Chapter 1 of Jane Eyre. In just one chapter, Bronte masterfully establishes the central conflicts and character traits that will drive the narrative forward. Jane's intelligence, imagination, and fierce sense of justice are already evident, as are the social constraints she must navigate. The seeds of the novel's exploration of gender, class, and personal integrity are all planted in these opening pages, making Chapter 1 a microcosm of the larger themes Brontë will develop throughout this revolutionary work. That's our analysis of Jane Eyre's opening chapter. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on this Victorian classic in the comments below. Until next time. Thank you and continue to enjoy reading this great novel.